What happens when loyalty meets corruption in the most prestigious halls of power? When a single guard's conscience becomes the last line of defense against a scheme that could topple an entire kingdom's financial foundation? This is not a tale of fiction, but a gripping, true account of how one man's unwavering integrity exposed a web of financial manipulation that reached the highest echelons of palace authority. In the shadowed corridors where power whispers its secrets, Marcus Chen had always believed his duty was clear: protect the palace, serve with honor, and maintain the sacred trust placed in him. But when he stumbled upon documents that revealed a shocking conspiracy to drain millions from the royal treasury, his simple world of right and wrong exploded into a complex maze of danger, betrayal, and moral courage. This is the story of how a night security guard became an unlikely hero, risking everything to protect not just the physical walls of the palace, but the very soul of the institution he had sworn to serve. It's a tale that proves sometimes the most powerful weapon against corruption isn't wealth or position. It's the unshakable resolve of someone who refuses to look the other way. Marcus Chen adjusted his security badge one final time before beginning his shift at the royal palace of Valdoria. 23 years of faithful service had earned him the respect of his colleagues and the trust of palace administration. At 52, his graying temples and weathered hands told the story of countless nights walking these marble corridors, ensuring the safety of one of the world's most prestigious royal residences. The palace stood majestically against the evening sky, its golden spires catching the last rays of sunlight. Built in the 18th century, it housed not only the royal family but also served as the seat of government and the treasury for the entire kingdom. For Marcus, it represented everything noble and pure about service to one's country. His evening routine never varied. First, he would check in with the day shift supervisor, reviewing any unusual incidents or special instructions. Then he would begin his methodical patrol of the administrative wings, the royal quarters, and finally the highly restricted treasury section. The treasury had always been his favorite assignment. Few guards were trusted with access to these chambers, where centuries of royal wealth and important financial documents were stored. On this particular evening, October 15th, the palace seemed unusually quiet. Most of the administrative staff had left early for a long weekend, and only essential personnel remained. Marcus appreciated these peaceful shifts. They allowed him to perform his duties with the thoroughness and attention to detail that had made him legendary among the security staff. As he entered the main administrative wing, Marcus noticed that several offices still had lights on. This struck him as odd, since the building should have been nearly empty by this hour. He made a mental note to investigate after completing his initial rounds. The click of his boots echoed through the empty hallways, a familiar sound that had become as natural to him as his own breathing. The first floor of the administrative wing housed various departments responsible for palace operations, from maintenance scheduling to ceremonial planning. Marcus checked each door, ensuring they were properly secured. Everything appeared normal until he reached the finance ministry offices on the second floor. Through the frosted glass door of the chief financial officer's suite, Marcus could see the glow of computer screens and the silhouettes of at least 3 people moving around inside. He glanced at his watch. 11:47 p.m. The finance ministry typically closed at 5 in the afternoon, and Marcus couldn't recall any notice about evening work being conducted. Following protocol, Marcus decided to announce his presence. He knocked firmly on the door and identified himself: Palace Security. Just checking on the evening activity. The movement inside the office suddenly stopped. After a long pause, the door opened to reveal Jonathan Blackwood, the assistant financial controller. Marcus knew Blackwood by sight, but had never had much interaction with him. The man appeared nervous, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, his tie loose around his neck. "Oh, hello, Marcus," Blackwood said, his voice slightly strained. "We're just finishing up some urgent budget reconciliations. End-of-quarter deadlines, you know how it is." Behind Blackwood, Marcus could see 2 other individuals he didn't recognize. One was a woman in an expensive-looking business suit, hunched over a laptop computer. The other was a man in casual clothes who seemed to be handling stacks of documents. Neither looked up when Marcus appeared at the door. "I'll need to see identification for your guests," Marcus said politely but firmly. "Palace security protocols require all after-hours visitors to be logged and escorted." Blackwood's face flushed slightly. Of course. These are external auditors. Very routine work. I have all their paperwork filed with security already. Marcus frowned. He had checked the visitor logs at the beginning of his shift, and no external auditors had been scheduled for evening work. Moreover, all visitors were supposed to be escorted by security at all times, especially in sensitive areas like the finance ministry. I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood, but I don't show any authorized visitors for this evening. I'll need to verify their credentials and escort status. The tension in the room became palpable. The woman at the laptop finally looked up, her expression cold and calculating. The man with the documents had moved closer to what appeared to be a paper shredder. Listen, Marcus, Blackwood said, his tone shifting to something more conciliatory. This is really sensitive work, royal family privacy issues, you understand. The less people who know about it, the better. I can personally vouch for these individuals. Marcus had been in security long enough to recognize when something wasn't right. The nervous energy in the room, the late hour, the lack of proper documentation, and most importantly, Blackwood's increasingly defensive attitude all raised red flags. His training had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now those instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. Sir, I'm going to need you and your guests to step outside while I contact my supervisor, Marcus said firmly. This is standard procedure for any unauthorized after-hours activity. The woman at the laptop suddenly began typing furiously, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The man near the shredder grabbed a handful of documents and started feeding them into the machine. Blackwood stepped directly in front of Marcus, his demeanor now openly hostile. You're making a big mistake, Blackwood warned. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? This operation has approval from the highest levels of government. You're just a security guard. Stay in your lane. Marcus had faced intimidation before, but never from palace staff. His loyalty, however, wasn't to any individual person, but to the institution itself and the principles it represented. He keyed his radio to call for backup and additional supervision. Don't make that call, the woman said sharply, standing up from the laptop. You have no idea what you're interfering with. But Marcus was already speaking into his radio. Control. This is Chen. Friday. I need supervisory assistance in the finance ministry offices. Unauthorized personnel and suspicious activity. The response came immediately. Copy that, Chen. Supervisor Rodriguez is en route. Maintain position and observe. The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. Blackwood began pacing, running his hands through his hair. The woman slammed the laptop shut and began gathering cables and external drives. The man at the shredder was working frantically to destroy documents. You have no idea what you've just done, Blackwood said to Marcus. This is bigger than you can possibly imagine. Marcus remained calm, positioning himself where he could observe all three individuals while maintaining clear access to the exit. His years of experience had taught him that the most dangerous moments often came when people felt cornered. Within 5 minutes, Supervisor Rodriguez arrived with 2 additional security officers. Rodriguez was a veteran with even more experience than Marcus, and he quickly assessed the situation. What do we have here? Rodriguez asked. Marcus explained what he had discovered, emphasizing the lack of proper authorization and the suspicious behavior of the individuals involved. Rodriguez examined the visitor logs on his tablet and confirmed that no external personnel had been authorized for evening work in the finance ministry. Mr. Blackwood, Rodriguez said formally, I'm going to need to see identification for these individuals and documentation for whatever work you're conducting here. Blackwood's response was telling. Instead of cooperating, he pulled out his cell phone and began making calls. I need to speak with Director Hamilton immediately, he said into the phone. We have a situation. The woman, meanwhile, was arguing with the security officers about her laptop and equipment. She claimed it contained proprietary information that couldn't be examined without proper legal authorization. The man at the shredder had managed to destroy a significant amount of documentation before being stopped. Rodriguez made the decision to secure the scene. I'm sealing this office pending investigation, he announced. Nothing leaves this room without proper authorization. It was at this moment that Marcus noticed something that would prove crucial to the unfolding events. On Blackwood's desk, partially hidden under other papers, was a financial statement with figures that made no sense. Even with his limited knowledge of palace finances, Marcus could see that the numbers represented enormous sums of money being moved between accounts in ways that seemed highly irregular. As additional personnel arrived to secure the scene, Marcus found himself thinking about his 23 years of service. He had always believed that his job was straightforward: protect the palace and everyone in it. But tonight he realized that sometimes protection meant more than just watching for physical threats. Sometimes it meant protecting the very integrity of the institution itself. The night was far from over, and Marcus had the growing suspicion that what he had stumbled upon was just the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. As he watched Director Hamilton arrive with a team of investigators, Marcus knew that his simple world of clear-cut duties and straightforward loyalty was about to become much more complicated. The palace that had been his sanctuary for over 2 decades was about to become the center of a storm that would test everything he believed about honor, duty, and the courage required to do what was right, even when the cost might be higher than he ever imagined possible. Director Hamilton's arrival changed the entire atmosphere in the Finance Ministry offices. A tall, imposing man with silver hair and sharp eyes, Hamilton commanded immediate respect from everyone present. He had served as Palace Security Director for over 15 years and was known for his unwavering dedication to protocol and his fierce protection of royal interests. Marcus watched as Hamilton surveyed the scene, his experienced gaze taking in every detail. The director spoke quietly with Supervisor Rodriguez, reviewing the circumstances that had led to the current situation. Marcus noticed that Blackwood seemed relieved by Hamilton's presence, which struck him as odd, given the circumstances. "Mr. Chen," Hamilton called out, his voice carrying the authority of decades in security leadership. "Please walk me through exactly what you observed this evening." Marcus recounted the events methodically, from his initial notice of the lights in the office to his decision to investigate and ultimately call for backup. He emphasized his concerns about the lack of proper authorization for the visitors and the suspicious behavior he had witnessed. As Marcus spoke, he noticed Hamilton exchanging glances with Blackwood. There was something in that silent communication that made Marcus uncomfortable, though he couldn't quite identify what it was. His instincts, which had served him well throughout his career, were telling him to be very careful about what he said and to whom. These appear to be legitimate auditors working on sensitive royal financial matters, Hamilton said after Marcus finished his account. "Mr. Blackwood has assured me that all proper protocols were followed, even though the documentation may not have reached your level of the security chain." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Something was very wrong with this explanation, but challenging Director Hamilton directly would be a serious breach of protocol and could end his career instantly. "Sir," Marcus said carefully, "I checked all visitor authorizations at the beginning of my shift. There were no auditors listed, and protocol requires all visitors to be escorted by security personnel." Hamilton's expression hardened slightly. "Mr. Chen, there are levels of palace operations that require discreet handling. Not every activity can be broadcast through normal security channels. I'm sure you understand the need for confidentiality in certain royal matters." The woman who had been working at the laptop stepped forward. She was older than Marcus had initially thought, probably in her mid-50s, with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "Director Hamilton, I appreciate your security officer's diligence, but this delay is costing us valuable time. We have deadlines to meet for the royal family." Hamilton nodded. "Of course, Ms. Thornfield. Mr. Chen, please escort our guests to Conference Room B, where they can continue their work without further interruption." Marcus found himself in an impossible position. His training told him that something was fundamentally wrong with this situation, but his chain of command was explicitly ordering him to facilitate what appeared to be unauthorized activity. The 23 years he had spent building his reputation and career hung in the balance. "Director Hamilton," Marcus said, choosing his words very carefully, "could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Hamilton's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. They stepped into the hallway, leaving Rodriguez to supervise the scene. "Sir," Marcus began, "I've been working palace security for over 2 decades. I've never seen external auditors working at this hour without proper documentation. The behavior I witnessed in that office was not consistent with legitimate financial work." Hamilton studied Marcus for a long moment. "Mr. Chen, you've been a valuable member of this security team for many years. Your dedication is commendable. However, there are aspects of palace operations that require handling at levels above your clearance. I'm asking you to trust the chain of command and allow these individuals to complete their work. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. He could follow orders and walk away, trusting that his superiors knew what they were doing. Or he could continue to question what every instinct told him was wrong, potentially destroying his career and reputation in the process. Sir, I noticed financial documents on Mr. Blackwood's desk. The figures seemed irregular, involving very large sums of money. Shouldn't someone from internal audit be reviewing this activity? Hamilton's expression became cold. Mr. Chen, you are a security guard, not a financial analyst. Your observations about documents you have no authorization to view could be considered a serious breach of protocol. I suggest you focus on your actual duties and allow qualified personnel to handle financial matters. The threat was clear, but Marcus had spent his entire adult life in service to the palace. He had sworn an oath to protect not just the physical structure, but everything it represented. If that oath meant anything, he couldn't simply walk away from what he had witnessed. Director Hamilton, I request permission to file a formal incident report documenting tonight's events. I believe there are legitimate security concerns that should be reviewed by appropriate authorities. Hamilton's face flushed with anger. Mr. Chen, you are dangerously close to insubordination. These individuals have full authorization for their activities. Your incident report would be based on incomplete information and could damage sensitive royal operations. I strongly advise against such action. Marcus realized he was facing a crossroads that would define not only his career but his integrity as a man. Everything he had believed about his role and his duties was being challenged by the very people he had trusted to uphold the same values. Sir, with respect, I cannot in good conscience ignore what I witnessed tonight. If these are legitimate operations, then a formal review will confirm that. If they are not, then my oath requires me to protect the palace from any threat, regardless of where that threat might originate. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Hamilton stared at Marcus with a mixture of anger and something that looked almost like fear. Very well, Mr. Sissy. Chen, you may file your report. However, I want you to understand that false accusations against palace personnel and authorized operations carry serious consequences. Your job, your pension, your reputation, everything you've worked for could be at risk. Marcus nodded, understanding completely what he was being told, but he also understood something else. His wife Elena had often told him that a man's character was defined not by what he did when it was easy, but by what he did when it was hard. Tonight was definitely hard. Returning to the Finance Ministry offices, Marcus observed as the three individuals gathered their materials. Thornfield had reconnected her laptop and appeared to be transferring files to an external drive. The man who had been shredding documents was now loading boxes of papers onto a cart. Blackwood was on his phone again, speaking in hushed tones. As they prepared to move to the conference room Hamilton had designated, Marcus made a decision that would prove crucial to everything that followed. While pretending to check his security equipment, he activated the small digital camera that all security personnel carried for documenting incidents. The camera was capable of recording both video and audio, and Marcus positioned it to capture the activity in the office. The group moved to Conference Room B, a secure meeting space typically used for sensitive royal business. Marcus was ordered to stand guard outside the room, but the positioning allowed him to observe through a small window in the door. What he saw over the next several hours convinced him beyond any doubt that he was witnessing something far more serious than unauthorized auditing. The three individuals worked with the intensity of people under extreme pressure. Miss Thornfield's laptop screen displayed what appeared to be bank account information and financial transfer records. The man who had been shredding documents was now systematically photographing remaining papers with a small camera. Most disturbing of all, Blackwood was on his phone repeatedly, and from his gestures and expressions, the conversations appeared increasingly frantic. At approximately 3:30 a.m., Marcus witnessed something that would haunt him for months to come. Through the conference room window, he saw Ms. Thornfield show Blackwood something on her laptop screen. Blackwood's reaction was immediate and violent. He slammed his fist on the table and began shouting, though Marcus could not hear the words through the soundproof glass. The man with the camera grabbed Blackwood's arm, apparently trying to calm him down. Miss Thornfield closed the laptop and began disconnecting cables with swift, efficient movements. The body language of all three individuals suggested panic, as if they had discovered something that had gone terribly wrong. Within minutes, they were packing up their equipment and materials. Blackwood made one final phone call, this time pacing frantically as he spoke. When he hung up, he said something to the other two that caused Miss Thornfield to immediately begin deleting files from her laptop. Marcus knew he was witnessing the destruction of evidence, but he was powerless to stop it without direct authorization from Director Hamilton. The conflict between his training and his instincts had never been more intense. As dawn approached, the three individuals prepared to leave the palace. Director Hamilton arrived to personally escort them out, another breach of normal protocol that Marcus noted carefully. Before leaving, Hamilton pulled Marcus aside one final time. "Mr. Chen, I trust you understand the sensitive nature of tonight's activities. Your discretion is not only expected but required. Any public discussion of these events could constitute a breach of your security oath and result in immediate termination and possible legal action." Marcus nodded, but Hamilton apparently sensed his continued skepticism. "I want you to take the next 3 days off," Hamilton continued. "Consider them personal days. When you return, I expect this matter to be closed in your mind." As Marcus watched the three visitors leave with Director Hamilton, he realized that he was being warned, threatened, and potentially removed from the palace precisely when his presence might be most needed. The pieces of a larger puzzle were beginning to form in his mind, and the picture they created was deeply troubling. Walking to his car as his shift ended, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He would spend his forced time off investigating what he had witnessed. His oath to protect the palace meant protecting it from all threats, even those that came from within. Even if it meant risking everything he had spent his life building, he could not walk away from the growing certainty that something terrible was happening in the institution he had sworn to serve. Marcus spent his first day off in a state of restless uncertainty. The events of that night replayed in his mind constantly, each detail becoming more significant as he examined it from different angles. Elena, his wife of 28 years, noticed his distraction immediately. "You've been staring at that coffee cup for 20 minutes, she said, settling into the chair across from him in their modest kitchen. "What's eating at you?" Elena was a retired school principal, known for her ability to read people and situations with remarkable accuracy. Throughout their marriage, she had been Marcus's most trusted advisor and sounding board. But this situation was different. This could affect not just his career, but potentially their safety and security. "Work issues," Marcus said finally. "Something doesn't feel right about a situation I encountered." Elena studied his face with the penetrating gaze that had made her legendary among both students and faculty. "Marcus Chen, in 28 years of marriage, you have never brought work problems home unless they were serious. What happened?" Marcus found himself in another impossible position. His security oath required him to maintain confidentiality about palace operations, but his marriage had been built on honesty and trust. More importantly, he was beginning to realize that he might need Elena's perspective and advice to navigate the dangerous waters he was entering. "Elena, if I tell you something, it has to stay between us. Not just because I ask you to, but because it might be dangerous if the wrong people knew we were discussing it." Elena's expression became serious immediately. She reached across the table and took his hand, and the docs cut off. Marcus recounted the previous night's events, leaving out specific names and locations, but providing enough detail for Elena to understand the scope of what he had witnessed. As he spoke, he watched his wife's expression change from concern to alarm to something approaching fear. "Marcus," she said when he finished, "you're describing what sounds like theft or embezzlement on a massive scale. These people weren't auditors, they were stealing." "That's what I think too," Marcus admitted, "but Director Hamilton assured me they were authorized. My chain of command is telling me to drop it and forget what I saw." Elena stood up and began pacing around their small kitchen, a habit she had developed during her years as a principal when dealing with particularly difficult problems. "Your chain of command may be compromised," she said bluntly. "Think about it. If someone is stealing millions from the royal treasury, they would need inside help. They would need people in positions of authority to look the other way or actively assist them." The possibility that Director Hamilton might be involved in the theft had occurred to Marcus, but hearing it spoken aloud by Elena made it feel real and terrifying. "If that's true," Marcus said slowly, "then filing my incident report could be walking into a trap. They could use it to destroy me before I can expose them." Elena stopped pacing and looked directly at him. Or staying silent could make you an accessory to one of the biggest thefts in royal history. Marcus, you've spent your entire career protecting that palace. How can you walk away now when it needs protecting most? Marcus spent the rest of the day wrestling with the implications of Elena's words. By evening, he had made a decision. He would conduct his own investigation, carefully and quietly, to determine the truth of what he had witnessed. If he was wrong, he would quietly drop the matter. If he was right, he would find a way to expose the theft without destroying himself in the process. His first step was to review the digital recording he had made during the incident. Using Elena's laptop, he carefully examined the audio and video he had captured. What he discovered exceeded his worst fears. The audio quality was better than he had expected, and he was able to hear several conversations that had taken place in the finance ministry office. Most damning was a phone conversation in which Blackwood explicitly discussed moving the remaining funds before the quarterly audit next week could discover the shortfall. Even more troubling was a conversation between Miss Thornfield and the third individual, where they discussed covering the transfer trail and ensuring that the original account numbers couldn't be traced. These were not the conversations of legitimate auditors reviewing palace finances. The video footage was equally revealing. Marcus could clearly see financial documents on Blackwood's desk showing enormous transfers between accounts, many involving offshore banks that had no legitimate connection to royal operations. The systematic destruction of documents and the frantic deletion of computer files painted a clear picture of criminals destroying evidence. Armed with this information, Marcus faced his next crucial decision. Who could he trust with what he had discovered? Going back to Director Hamilton was clearly not an option if Hamilton was compromised. But approaching external authorities could be seen as a betrayal of his oath and might result in his immediate termination and prosecution. Elena suggested a solution that initially seemed impossible, but gradually began to make sense. What about the royal family themselves? If someone is stealing their money, don't they have a right to know? The idea of directly approaching the royal family seemed audacious beyond imagination. Marcus was a security guard, not a senior official. The protocols for such contact were complex and could easily be blocked by the very people he suspected of wrongdoing. However, Elena's suggestion sparked another idea. Marcus remembered that Princess Catherine, the king's daughter, was known for her hands-on approach to royal finances and her reputation for integrity. More importantly, she regularly visited the palace for meetings and maintained an office there. Over the next 2 days, Marcus developed a plan. He would return to work and perform his duties normally, avoiding any behavior that might suggest continued suspicion. Meanwhile, he would watch for an opportunity to speak privately with Princess Catherine about his concerns. The opportunity came sooner than expected. On his first day back, Marcus learned that Princess Catherine was scheduled for a late evening meeting in the palace, reviewing budget proposals for her various charitable foundations. The meeting was scheduled to end around 10 p.m., which would place her departure during Marcus's shift. Marcus positioned himself along the princess's expected exit route, ensuring that he would have a natural opportunity to speak with her without arousing suspicion. At 10:15 p.m., Princess Catherine emerged from the meeting room, accompanied by 2 staff members and her personal security detail. As the group approached the main exit, Marcus stepped forward with a formal bow. "Your Royal Highness, might I have a moment of your time regarding a security matter?" Princess Catherine was known for her accessibility and concern for palace operations. She nodded to her security detail and stepped aside with Marcus. "What can I help you with, Mr. Chen, Your Highness?" Marcus Chen. "I've been with palace security for 23 years. Marcus had rehearsed this moment repeatedly, but actually standing before royalty and preparing to make accusations against palace officials was more intimidating than anything he had ever experienced. "Your Highness, 3 nights ago I discovered what I believe to be unauthorized financial activity in the finance ministry offices. The individuals involved claim to be auditors, but their behavior and the documentation I observed suggest something far more serious." Princess Catherine's expression became intensely focused. "What kind of documentation?" Marcus described what he had seen, emphasizing the large financial transfers and the systematic destruction of documents. He mentioned his concerns about the lack of proper authorization and the suspicious behavior of the individuals involved. "Have you reported this through normal channels?" the princess asked. "Yes, Your Highness." 1. However, Director Hamilton has assured me that the activity was authorized and has strongly discouraged further investigation. The princess was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see her processing the implications of what he was telling her. Mr. Chen, these are very serious accusations. If you're correct, we're talking about potential theft from the royal treasury. If you're incorrect, you're accusing palace officials of criminal activity based on misunderstanding. I understand, Your Highness. That's why I've come to you rather than to external authorities. I believe the royal family has a right to know about potential threats to their financial security. Princess Catherine made a decision that would prove pivotal to everything that followed. Mr. Chen, I want you to provide me with a detailed written report of everything you witnessed. Can you do this without anyone else knowing about our conversation? Yes, Your Highness. Good. Prepare your report and bring it to my office tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. Tell no one about this meeting or your report. Can I trust you to maintain complete confidentiality? Absolutely, Your Highness. As Princess Catherine rejoined her group and left the palace, Marcus realized that he had crossed a line from which there would be no return. He had gone outside the normal chain of command and directly accused palace officials of criminal activity. If he was wrong, his career would be destroyed. If he was right, he might have just saved the royal treasury from devastating theft. But he also realized something else. Director Hamilton would eventually learn about his conversation with Princess Catherine. When that happened, Marcus would become a target for people who had already demonstrated their willingness to steal millions from the royal treasury. The stakes had just become much higher, and Marcus was about to discover just how dangerous the truth could be when powerful people wanted it hidden. Marcus spent the entire next day crafting his report for Princess Catherine. Every word was carefully chosen, every detail precisely documented. He included transcripts of the conversations he had recorded, descriptions of the financial documents he had observed, and a timeline of events that painted a clear picture of criminal activity. Elena helped him review the report, ensuring that it was both comprehensive and professionally presented. They worked together at their kitchen table, the same place where they had planned their children's educations and celebrated family milestones. Now they were preparing a document that could either save the royal treasury or destroy their lives. Are you sure about this? Elena asked as Marcus prepared to leave for the palace that evening. Once you hand over that report, there's no going back. Marcus kissed his wife goodbye, wondering if it might be the last normal moment they would share for a long time. 23 years ago, I swore an oath to protect the palace and everything it represents. That oath didn't come with conditions about personal safety or career security. Arriving at the palace for his shift, Marcus noticed immediately that something was different. Additional security personnel were present, and there seemed to be unusual activity in the administrative areas. Director Hamilton was visible in the main lobby, speaking intently with several individuals Marcus didn't recognize. As Marcus checked in for his shift, Hamilton approached him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Chen, good to see you back. I trust your time off was refreshing? Yes, sir. Thank you. Excellent. Tonight I have a special assignment for you. We're conducting security upgrades in the Treasury section. I need you to supervise the installation team and ensure they have access to all necessary areas. Marcus felt alarm bells going off in his head. The Treasury section was the most secure area of the palace, and any work there would normally require extensive documentation and multiple authorizations. More troubling was the timing. If criminals were trying to cover up theft from the royal treasury, gaining access to that area would be crucial for destroying evidence or manipulating records. Sir, I don't show any scheduled maintenance for the Treasury section, Marcus said carefully. Hamilton's expression hardened slightly. As I mentioned before, Mr. Chen, there are operations that require discreet handling. The installation team has full authorization. Your job is simply to ensure they have access and can work without interruption. Marcus realized he was being maneuvered into a position where he would either have to facilitate what might be the completion of the theft or openly defy Director Hamilton's direct orders. Either choice could be disastrous. Sir, could I see the work authorization for the Treasury section? It would help me understand exactly what they need access to. Hamilton studied Marcus for a long moment. Mr. Chen, you seem to be having difficulty following direct orders lately. Are you questioning my authority? The threat was clear, but Marcus had come too far to back down now. No, sir. I simply want to ensure I can provide the best possible support. The Treasury section has very specific security protocols. Hamilton appeared to consider his options. Finally, he nodded curtly. Very well. Report to Treasury Supervisor Williams. He has all the necessary documentation and will brief you on the specifics. As Marcus made his way to the Treasury section, he realized that Hamilton had just made a critical mistake. Treasury Supervisor Williams was one of the most meticulous and honest officials in the palace. If there was unauthorized activity planned for the Treasury, Williams would be the first to question it. Williams was in his office reviewing paperwork when Marcus arrived. A man in his 60s with the careful manner of someone who had spent decades handling priceless artifacts and enormous sums of money. Williams looked up with surprise when Marcus knocked. "Marcus, good to see you. What brings you to the Treasury tonight?" "Director Hamilton sent me to supervise an installation team working on security upgrades. He said you had the authorization paperwork." Williams frowned immediately. "Installation team? Marcus, I haven't authorized any work in the Treasury section. In fact, we specifically avoid scheduling maintenance during audit periods, and we're in the middle of our quarterly review." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Hamilton had sent him to the Treasury section knowing that Williams would have no record of authorized work. It was either a test to see if Marcus would follow orders blindly, or it was an attempt to create confusion that would allow unauthorized access to the Treasury. "Mr. Benoro, Williams, I think we may have a problem," Marcus said, and quickly explained Hamilton's instructions and his own growing concerns about recent events. Williams listened with increasing alarm. As Treasury Supervisor, he was responsible for safeguarding not only physical valuables but also financial records dating back centuries. Any unauthorized access to these materials would be catastrophic. "Marcus, we need to verify this immediately. If someone is planning unauthorized access to the Treasury, we have very little time to prevent it." Williams immediately began making phone calls to verify the supposed security upgrade. What he discovered confirmed Marcus's worst fears. No security upgrades had been scheduled, authorized, or budgeted. No installation team had been cleared for Treasury access. Whatever Hamilton was planning was completely unauthorized. "Marcus, I'm going to contact the Royal Inspector General immediately," Williams said. "This is far beyond normal security concerns." But before Williams could make the call, they heard voices in the corridor outside the Treasury section. Through the office window, Marcus could see Hamilton approaching, with 3 individuals carrying what appeared to be computer equipment in briefcases. "They're here," Marcus whispered urgently. "Whatever they're planning to do, it's happening now." Williams grabbed his phone to call for help, but Marcus stopped him. "Mr. Williams, if Director Hamilton is involved in this, calling palace security might just bring more compromised personnel. We need to handle this differently." Marcus quickly explained his scheduled meeting with Princess Catherine and the report he had prepared. Williams's eyes widened as he realized the scope of what they were dealing with. "My God," Williams breathed. "They're not just stealing money. They're trying to destroy the evidence of the theft from the Treasury records." The group in the corridor had reached the Treasury entrance. Marcus could hear Hamilton's voice demanding access, claiming emergency authorization for critical security work. Williams made a decision that demonstrated remarkable courage. "Marcus, you need to get to Princess Catherine immediately. I'll delay them here as long as possible, but if they gain access to the central records, they could destroy evidence of financial crimes going back months or even years." Marcus realized that Williams was right. The meeting with Princess Catherine couldn't wait until 9 p.m. The theft was being completed tonight, and if he didn't act immediately, the criminals would successfully destroy all evidence of their crimes. Using a back corridor that bypassed the main Treasury entrance, Marcus made his way to Princess Catherine's office wing. Her staff informed him that she was in a meeting, but when Marcus explained that it was an emergency related to their previous conversation, she agreed to see him immediately. Princess Catherine listened with growing alarm as Marcus described the current situation in the Treasury section. When he finished, she immediately picked up her phone. "I'm calling the Royal Inspector General and the Internal Audit Division," she said. "If financial crimes are being committed in the palace, we need independent investigation immediately." Within 20 minutes, Inspector General Davidson arrived with a team of investigators and auditors. Davidson was a former prosecutor known for his relentless pursuit of financial crimes, and his complete independence from palace politics. "Your Royal Highness," Davidson said after reviewing Marcus's report and Williams's testimony, "if these allegations are correct, we're looking at one of the largest thefts in royal history. We need to secure the Treasury section immediately and prevent any further destruction of evidence." The confrontation in the Treasury section was swift but dramatic. Davidson and his team arrived to find Hamilton and his associates attempting to access central financial records. When challenged, Hamilton initially claimed emergency authorization, but when pressed for documentation, his story fell apart completely. The three individuals with Hamilton were arrested immediately. Computer forensic specialists began examining their equipment and discovered sophisticated hacking tools designed to manipulate financial records and create false audit trails. The scope of the theft began to emerge as investigators accessed backup systems that the criminals had been unable to compromise. Over the following weeks, the investigation revealed a conspiracy that reached deep into palace administration. Blackwood, Ms. Thornfield and their associates had been systematically stealing from royal accounts for over 2 years, transferring millions to offshore accounts and manipulating records to hide their crimes. Director Hamilton's involvement was particularly shocking. His position had given him the authority to suppress security reports and misdirect investigations. He had been receiving substantial payments for protecting the theft operation, and had been planning to disappear after one final raid on the Treasury records. The investigation ultimately revealed that over $8 million had been stolen from royal accounts. Most of the money was recovered from offshore accounts, and the criminals received substantial prison sentences. Hamilton was sentenced to 15 years in prison for his role in the conspiracy. End of quote. For Marcus, the aftermath was both rewarding and challenging. Princess Catherine personally commended him for his courage and integrity, and he was promoted to senior security specialist with responsibility for internal investigations. However, the experience had changed him profoundly. He now understood that protecting the palace meant being constantly vigilant against threats from within as well as from outside. Elena often reminded him that his decision to speak up had saved not just money, but the integrity of an institution that millions of people trusted and respected. "You could have walked away," she would say. "You could have decided it wasn't your problem, but you didn't." That's the difference between just having a job and having a calling. Marcus continued working at the palace for another 8 years before retiring. During that time, he helped establish new protocols for financial oversight and internal security reviews. His experience became a case study in security training programs, demonstrating the critical importance of individual integrity in protecting institutional values. On his final day of work, Marcus walked through the palace corridors one last time, reflecting on the 31 years he had spent protecting this remarkable institution. The marble floors and golden fixtures were unchanged, but he knew that the palace was more secure because of the night when he chose to trust his instincts and follow his conscience, even when doing so put everything he valued at risk. The oath he had sworn 31 years earlier had never mentioned the possibility that the greatest threats might come from within, or that protecting the palace might require challenging the very people entrusted with its leadership. But Marcus had learned that true integrity meant being willing to stand up for what was right, regardless of the personal cost. As he handed in his badge and walked out of the palace for the last time, Marcus knew that he had fulfilled his oath completely. He had protected not just the physical structure of the palace, but its honor, its integrity, and its trustworthiness. In the end, that was worth more than any career or any personal security he might have sacrificed to achieve it.